But let me go to a more complex detail like this one here. This is a bit more challenging because here we have, first of all, quite a big detail, this antenna, but also in the background we have lots of little details. So like the palm tree, the reflection of the palm tree, then the street and the buildings in the background, even people. So here we have to be really accurate when we are working. But the same technique I'm going to do as before. Select the spot healing brush tool first and then paint over the majority of the details I would like to remove. Even include that bit there. So when I let go, you see it actually did a really good job already. I can even try to remove that and it did a good job on that too. So majority is already gone. I can go over that bit, that's gone as well. I can paint over this detail here, and now let's see if it can remove that. Yep, it did a good job on that too. Let's go over some bits here. Now this is where it starts to get confused, not knowing what we want to remove and what we want to replace it to. Another thing you have to make sure that you are aware of is reflections on water. While this reflection here belongs to the boats, this reflection doesn't really belong to anything. So we have to make sure this is not here. So it shouldn't be reflecting something that's not above it. Okay, so these are also things you have to make sure you pay attention to. And still using the spot healing brush, I just paint over quickly this cable. Now I won't go further than that because what I wanted to do is to fix this area here. So I'm going to switch back to the clone stamp tool. And just to make sure that this corner looks good, I'm going to sample again from an edge detail like this one here. Align it to the other bit there, so the other tile. And then I go over the edge like that, all the way to the edge. And once again, a bit of the reflection came back, so I'm just going to tidy that up. So sometimes you go over details several times until they get completely removed. But you can see if I turn this layer off, that was before, this is after, that's already a big improvement. The only thing is here around the palm tree, which we have to also be careful about. So I'm going to switch back again to the spot healing, or maybe the healing brush in this case, and then sample from somewhere around here, paint over this little detail just to make the reflection look better. Then again, still using the healing brush, I will probably sample from around here, align it, and then paint over it sideways in this case. So I'm not going and following that object, I'm following the background. Once again, sample from the shore, maybe from somewhere around here, align it. That way I can remove any remaining details from the antenna. Just like that. And if you start seeing smudge details, you know which tool you need. You need the clone stamp tool. So select that, and from a surrounding area, you just sample something that fits in nicely with that detail. And then I would just continue doing the same thing. First, for the palm tree, I would probably sample from the other palm tree, which looks very similar. Align it, and then paint over it. You can see how quickly we managed to remove that. Then maybe sample from the top of this palm tree and align it here. That looks good. So we use two separate alignment. Then probably sample from somewhere here to paint over these details. You can even use the spot healing brush there, or healing brush, which you sample and align. Something like that. And to be honest, the rest of the details won't be obvious, so you can even leave them in, or if you want to be very accurate, you can remove all the remaining details. Now if I zoom out, although it's not perfect, you can still see that before and after it looks very convincing. So it would be probably only spotted by professionals or someone who has a really sharp eye. But with the same technique, I could remove any detail from here. And what we did in the previous example, moving sheep around, we could move ships around as well. Like here, this ship could be moved to the side, or maybe even completely removed if that's what we want, or even cloned or duplicated. So it's entirely up to you how you use these tools. And the more you practice, the faster you will get at retouching images. But there's one last thing I wanted to show you, and that is how to combine the clone stamp with selections. So let me zoom closer to this detail here. And I like these roofs apart from this big white blank wall. So that is something I would like to also remove, and maybe also remove this chimney and these other details here. But mainly I'm concerned about this area here. So I want to see nice clean water instead of that, because even from a distance, that white wall really stands out and takes the attention away from the nice background with the water and the little town. First of all, we will need to make a selection of this. So what I will do here is first use the quick selection tool to make a quick selection. So I just paint over the wall, but it won't select the edges. And I won't go over the edges with this tool because it will just select too much. So I press Q instead, which will switch to quick mask. And then using the brush tool with white as my foreground color, I include a bit around the edges. So I just paint over the edge here and also a little bit further that way. And we can even include these boats in the background. And of course, I want to remove this chimney as well. And then we can deal with the sails later. They are so tiny details. I'm not even worried about those. But now I have quite a good selection. Maybe the only thing is here, this side of the wall, which I actually want to keep, because otherwise it would look strange, this angle. So I press X again to switch to black, and I'm just going to paint over this edge here. Okay, so we have a good selection, I think. If I press Q, now we can see it. Of course, it can always be improved later, but for now, I think this is something I can work with. So having a selection, you are constraining the clone stamp to work only within this area. So we can switch to first maybe healing brush, and then just sample from the water above and start painting over these details. So we can start painting. Now you can see, because it's such a big surface, it actually blends the colors of the wall into the water. So sometimes it's actually better to use the clone stamp first to get the color of the water in all the way here. So I intentionally went further in. Again, I alt click there, paint over these details. And the whole point of making the selection is that I can even paint here and see it only paints over the details we selected, but it won't affect any detail outside of the selection. So I managed to keep all the plants there as well visible, and I only removed the wall within the selection. So we will do the same here as well. So the big surface, I'm actually removing with the clone stamp, all these bigger details. And then later, I'm going to worry about blending the edges together. So now I can deselect, pressing Command D. And I can even switch now to the spot healing brush and just paint along the edges. And also at the same time, now we can start removing the sails, because obviously now they are just floating in air. So once again, that doesn't make any sense. So let's just go over this bit here. That actually worked out quite well there on the top. Can do the same thing with this detail. So gradually we are removing the sails, and then do the same thing with this. We can try going over it and see what happens. It actually worked out perfectly. So now we just clean up using the spot healing brush. But remember, sometimes for blending, it's better to use the normal healing brush instead of the spot healing brush. So with this, I can select any details and then paint over the rest of these details and then create a good blend. Sometimes a bigger brush in this case might work better, because we are working with quite a big surface area of water here. So we need to be able to blend bigger details together. So it might take a while until we get this right. And I'm sure that we can find also good sampling points around the image somewhere outside of this area, but for now I'm just focusing on this part. And I think that looks quite good already, so we can check before and after. And you can see we managed to remove a huge detail, and it's all a matter of time until I manage to tidy this up completely, so it won't be visible at all that we removed anything from here. Maybe I'll just go over this bit here as well. Let's zoom out a bit further. So from a distance, of course, it will be even less visible, but sometimes you might spot details from far away that you might not notice when you are zoomed in. Like I can see a bit of shade here that I can paint over. So that wasn't really visible when I was closer. And as I said, it might take a little bit of extra work, but we retouched a huge area. So once again, before and after. So from the very tiny details like cables to whole buildings even, you can remove unwanted details, duplicate them, or just move to different sections of the image. Now that we went through these basic techniques with the clone stamp, in the next video, I'm going to talk about the clone source panel, which opens up even more ways of using this amazing retouching tool.